The fair catch kick. The field goal no one sees coming. The fair catch kick is arguably the most obscure and fascinating rule in the NFL. It allows a team that has just made a fair catch to attempt a free kick from the spot of the catch, which can score 3 points if it goes through the uprights. This is not a play from scrimmage. There is no snap, no offensive line, and the defense must remain 10 yards back from the line of scrimmage until the ball is kicked. The kicking team can choose to either place kick it or drop kick it, but they cannot use a tee. This rule is a holdover from the early days of football, a relic of the sport's rugby roots, and it has been attempted only a handful of times in the modern era. The most recent successful fair catch kick was in 1976 by the Green Bay Packers. The reason it is so rare is that the circumstances required for it to be a viable option are incredibly specific. A team must make a fair catch with only a few seconds left on the clock, at a spot on the field that is within their kicker's range, and in a situation where a field goal is the only realistic scoring option. Most of the time, if a team makes a fair catch in that situation, they will opt to run a traditional offensive play to get closer or take a shot at the end zone. The fair catch kick remains a forgotten weapon in the NFL playbook, a strategic oddity that only comes to light once every few decades, leaving fans and even some players scratching their heads in confusion. The one-point safety, the rarest score in football. The one-point safety is the rarest score in all of football, a play so convoluted and unlikely that it has never occurred in the history of the NFL. It can only happen on a two-point conversion or extra point attempt. The sequence of events required for a one-point safety is mind-boggling. First, the offensive team on a conversion attempt must turn the ball over to the defense. Then the defensive player who now has the ball must advance it all the way back to their own 1-yard line, but not into the end zone. At that point, that player must be tackled in their own end zone by a member of the original offensive team. If all of those conditions are met, the original offensive team is awarded 1 point. The rule exists as a logical extension of the safety rule to the unique context of a conversion attempt. A normal safety is worth 2 points, but on a conversion, the play itself is only worth a maximum of 2 points, so a safety scored by the offense against the defense is valued at 1. The sheer improbability of this play is what makes it so legendary. It would require a series of bizarre decisions and events, a turnover, a long return, and a last-second tackle in the end zone, all on a single, untimed down. It remains the white whale of NFL scoring, a theoretical possibility that exists in the rulebook, but has yet to manifest on the field. The drop kick, the lost art of scoring. The drop kick, a technique where a player drops the ball and kicks it as it hits the ground, is a legal but almost entirely extinct method of scoring a field goal or extra point in the NFL. In the early days of football, when the ball was rounder and more conducive to bouncing predictably, the drop kick was a common play. However, as the football evolved into its modern, prolate spheroid shape, the bounce became far too unpredictable for the drop kick to be a reliable option. The last successful drop kick in the NFL was by Doug Flutie in the final game of the 2005 regular season. Flutie, then the backup quarterback for the New England Patriots, converted an extra point with a drop kick, a nostalgic and surprising move that was his final play in the NFL. The rule for a drop kick is the same as for a place kick. It is worth 3 points for a field goal and 1 point for an extra point. The reason it is no longer used is purely a matter of practicality. The risk of a bad bounce is too high, and the place kick is a far more accurate and reliable method of scoring. The drop kick remains in the rulebook as a nod to the sport's history, a forgotten art that occasionally makes a surprise appearance, reminding fans of a time when the game was played very differently. Punting on an onside kick, a bizarre and illegal strategy. In a 2025 game, the Cincinnati Bengals attempted a bizarre and ultimately illegal play that brought to light an obscure corner of the NFL rulebook, punting an onside kick. In a desperate attempt to recover the ball, the Bengals, instead of a traditional onside kick, had their kicker punt the ball high and short. The play was immediately flagged, and the penalty revealed a little-known rule about the setup zone on kickoffs. The rule states that on a kickoff, the kicking team cannot kick the ball directly into the ground, and the ball must travel at least 1 yard before it is touched by the kicking team. The Bengals' punted onside kick was deemed to have violated the spirit of this rule, as it was not a true kickoff. The penalty was for an illegal kick, and the bizarre play was nullified. This incident highlighted the NFL's efforts to regulate onside kicks, a play that has become increasingly difficult to execute successfully due to rule changes designed to improve player safety. The Bengals' creative but illegal attempt was a sign of the lengths teams will go to find an edge in the kicking game, and it served as a reminder that the NFL rulebook is a dense and complex document with regulations covering even the most outlandish of scenarios. The snap through the quarterback's legs, a rule for unusual formations. One of the most peculiar and specific rules in the NFL governs the snap on plays from scrimmage. The rule states that the ball must be snapped in a single, continuous motion, and it must be passed between the center's legs. However, there is an obscure and rarely invoked part of this rule that deals with what happens if the snap is not handled by the quarterback. If the ball is snapped and it touches the ground before it is possessed by a player, it is considered a loose ball and can be recovered by either team. But if the snap goes through the quarterback's legs and is caught by another player, the play is legal. This rule allows for some creative and deceptive formations, such as the huddle or other trick plays where the quarterback acts as a decoy. The key is that the snap must be a clean exchange. This rule is a small but important detail that allows for creativity within the rigid structure of the game, but it also carries a high risk. A fumbled snap in one of these trick formations can lead to a disastrous turnover. It's a rule that lives on the fringes of the game, a tool for the boldest of play callers. The 2-minute warning and the 10-second runoff. Manipulating the clock. The 2-minute warning is a familiar part of every NFL game, but the rules surrounding clock stoppages inside the final 2 minutes are incredibly complex and often misunderstood. One of the weirdest and most impactful of these is the 10-second runoff. This rule is designed to prevent the offensive team from gaining an unfair advantage by committing a penalty to stop the clock. If the offense commits a foul inside the final 2 minutes of either half, and that foul causes the clock to stop, the referees will enforce a 10-second runoff in addition to the yardage penalty. The offensive team can choose to decline the runoff by taking a timeout. This rule has a massive strategic impact on end-of-game scenarios. A team that is driving for a game-winning score can have its hopes dashed by a false start or an offensive holding penalty that not only costs them yards, but also precious seconds. It's a rule that forces teams to be incredibly disciplined in high-pressure situations and adds another layer of strategic complexity to the final moments of a close game. The Palpably Unfair Act, the referee's ultimate power. The Palpably Unfair Act is the most powerful and rarely used tool in a referee's arsenal. It is a catch-all rule that gives the referee the authority to award a score, penalize a team with a significant loss of yards, or even suspend a player if they believe that a team has committed an act so unfair that it cannot be addressed by any other rule in the book. This rule is designed to be a safeguard against bizarre and unforeseen circumstances. For example, if a player from the bench were to run onto the field and tackle a player who was about to score a touchdown, the referee could invoke the Palpably Unfair Act rule and award the touchdown. The rule has been used only a handful of times in NFL history, most famously in a 1981 game between the Baltimore Colts and the New England Patriots, where the Patriots were awarded a touchdown after the Colts bench was deemed to have interfered with a play. The Palpably Unfair Act is the NFL's nuclear option, a rule that gives the referee the power to correct a gross injustice and ensure that the outcome of a game is not determined by an act of blatant and unprecedented cheating. The rule of 12 men on the field. In the huddle. Everyone knows that having 12 men on the field during a play is a penalty. But what many fans don't know is that it is also illegal to have 12 men in the huddle. This rule is designed to prevent teams from using deception to confuse the defense. A team cannot send 12 players into the huddle and then have one of them sprint to the sideline at the last second, hoping to catch the defense off guard and create a substitution advantage. The rule states that if a team has 12 men in the huddle, it is a penalty for illegal substitution, even if one of the players leaves the field before the snap. This is a subtle but important rule that maintains the integrity of the substitution process. It forces teams to be clear and decisive with their personnel groupings and prevents them from using the huddle as a tool for subterfuge. It's a small detail, but it's one of the many rules that ensures a level playing field and prevents the game from descending into chaos. The forward pass and the illegal forward pass, a web of complexity. The forward pass is the foundation of the modern NFL, but the rules governing it are surprisingly complex. Everyone knows that you can only throw one forward pass per play, but the nuances of what constitutes a legal and illegal forward pass are often a source of confusion. A pass is considered a forward pass if it is thrown from behind the line of scrimmage and it travels forward. However, if a player throws a second forward pass on the same play, it is a penalty. If a player who is beyond the line of scrimmage throws a forward pass, it is also a penalty. The location of the player's feet, not the ball, determines whether they are beyond the line of scrimmage. This rule has led to some controversial calls, as a quarterback scrambling near the line of scrimmage can be just inches away from committing a costly penalty. The rule also has a strange exception. A forward pass that is batted or tipped by a defender and then caught by an offensive player is considered a completed pass, not a second forward pass. This web of rules surrounding the forward pass is a testament to the complexity of the game and the constant effort by the league to define and regulate its most fundamental action. The ineligible replace downfield. A lineman's leash. The rule about ineligible receivers downfield is one of the most technical and often missed penalties in the NFL. It is designed to maintain the balance between the passing game and the pass rush. On a forward pass play, the 5 offensive linemen are considered ineligible receivers, meaning they cannot go more than 1 yard downfield before the pass is thrown. This rule prevents the offensive line from simply running down the field and blocking for a screen pass or other short throw, which would give the offense an unfair advantage. The penalty for an ineligible receiver downfield is 5 yards, and it can nullify a big play. This rule is incredibly difficult for referees to officiate in real time, as they have to watch the offensive line, the quarterback, and the receivers all at once. It is often only called after a coach's challenge or a replay review. It's a rule that operates in the trenches, a subtle but crucial part of the game that ensures that the big men up front stay where they belong on passing plays. The onside kick and the kicking team's advantage. The onside kick is one of the most exciting and desperate plays in football, but the rules governing it have been a source of constant debate and change. One of the weirdest and most counterintuitive rules about the onside kick is that the kicking team is not required to let the receiving team have a chance to catch the ball. On a normal kickoff, the kicking team cannot interfere with the receiving team's opportunity to make a catch. But on an onside kick, once the ball has traveled 10 yards, it is a live ball and it is a mad scramble for possession. The kicking team can legally recover the ball without it ever being touched by the receiving team. This rule is what makes the surprise onside kick possible. A team can line up for a normal kickoff and then, at the last second, kick the ball just over the 10-yard mark and try to recover it themselves. The NFL has made several rule changes in recent years to make onside kicks more difficult to recover, primarily for safety reasons, but the fundamental rule that the kicking team can recover its own kick after 10 yards remains, making it one of the most chaotic and unpredictable plays in the game. The fumble forward out of the end zone, the most punitive rule in football. The rule regarding a fumble that goes forward and out of the opponent's end zone is arguably the most punitive and controversial rule in the NFL. If an offensive player fumbles the ball, and that fumble travels forward into and out of the end zone, the result is not just a loss of possession, it is a touchback, and the defensive team is awarded the ball at their own 20-yard line. This rule is so harsh because it takes a play that could have been a touchdown and turns it into a catastrophic turnover. A player can be inches from scoring, lose control of the ball, and have it roll out of the end zone, and the penalty is the same as if they had thrown an interception that was returned to the 20-yard line. This rule has been the subject of intense debate for years, with many arguing that it is too severe and that the offensive team should retain possession at the spot of the fumble. However, the rule remains in place, a brutal and unforgiving part of the game that can swing the momentum of a game in an instant. It is a reminder that in the NFL, ball security is paramount, and the end zone is a place of both triumph and potential disaster.